Welcome to Indy Unplugged, the podcast that's your front row seat to the real talk of Indianola. I'm Aaron Young, your friendly neighborhood host, and we're diving deep into unfiltered stories, candid chats, and the nitty-gritty of our vibrant city. Think of this as a crash course in all things Indianola. No fancy jargon, just real conversations. So, get comfy, hit that play button, and let's explore the heart and soul of our community together on Indy Unplugged. Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of Indy Unplugged, a City of Indianola podcast. And today we're going to have a great conversation to learn more about this crazy thing that is Indianola Main Street. Today's guests were joined by Erica Roberts and Leslie Held with Indianola Main Street. How are you both doing today? Thanks so much for hopping on.
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yes.
It's a beautiful day in Indianola, 80 degrees. Come down to the square.
Yeah. No, and a lot will be happening on the square in the coming weeks, which we'll talk more about here in a bit. But just let's start right off the bat. What the heck is this thing that is called Indianola Main Street and Main Street, Iowa?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I have to confess, I did a little studying on the Main Street history last night and was interested in what I found. When you think about Main Street, Indianola, you have to roll back a little. There's Main Street, Iowa. There's Main Street, America. So the beginning of Main Street, America happened as a result of, in the 1950s, the 60s, things were popping up called shopping centers and malls, and they were building on the outskirts of town, and they were drawing commerce away from these historic downtowns. And our downtowns were dying. I think it happened in Indianola. It happened in my own hometown. Our JCPenney moved to the mall. Those sorts of things were happening. So the National Historic Preservation Committee responded to that and developed something called Main Street America. And it was an approach that took in 4 pillars. They developed a way to approach revitalizing historic downtowns. So Main Street, Iowa was formed in 1985. The Iowa legislature formed that, adopted the system, and they started accrediting in Iowa towns, and they started with 2, I believe. They do it every other year, and now we are up just past the 50 community mark. So Indianola, it's I think number 50. What, Erica?
53, I
53.
believe. In a nutshell, Main Street uses the revitalization of your downtown for economic growth. That's the goal.
So what was that process like for Indianola? Leslie, you talked about Indianola was recently named a Main Street, Iowa community. Just what was the application process like, or just what did you two plus dozens of others collectively had to do to get to this point where we're at today?
It was shortly after the beginning of this year that we started having more serious conversations on, are we going to apply for this in 2024? So worked a little bit with some partners being the city, the Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development, dove into the application process. It was a grueling application process. And so dove into that in the spring, worked as a committee and as team members to get the application turned in. And we accomplished that at the very end of May. Did our presentation to the panel in July and found out about a week after we presented, and we were able to publicly announce that in August of this year.
And when Main Street looks at communities, they look at literally everything. They look at the amount of support that you have from your community leaders, from your citizens, from your different organizations. They look at every statistic, I think, known to mankind. And then they really look to see if you're ready. So for Indianola, a big piece of this is we had done an awful lot of work up to that point, not specifically to get ready for Main Street, but to promote and improve our downtown. So that was so helpful in us being chosen. We were ready. This was, as our presentation was based on, this was the missing piece for us for our downtown. We had enthusiastic people But we really needed a framework for how to take the next step and push us forward.
So when you talk about the economic revitalization component, what are the other strengths and areas that Main Street will provide Indianola?
If you're looking at resources, these resources that Main Street will be providing are at no cost to us now that we have obtained the designation. There's going to be a ton of online resources as well as field assistance, specifically for small businesses, grant opportunities that are only given to Main Street communities. So those are just a few of the Main Street Iowa resources that now, we're going to be able to utilize here in Indianola.
It's been a misconception for many, and understandably so, that Main Street was a grant. So we get asked, did you get the grant? And it's not. It's actually something that provides us with a framework, a process, and resources. So they put all of that together, but there's no money involved in money that they grant to us. We actually had to go out and fundraise in our community to come up with our operating budget. And the community responded with well over $100,000 for our first year to get us up and rolling. That's why we were able to hire a full-time executive director. We now have a good budget that we can operate within. We transferred over a board of directors from the Indianola Downtown Merchants and then added key people to that.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that this is a self-sustaining program. So we will continue to get investors and get the community involved all the way through the process.
In those first 3 years, Main Street provides us with a lot of training and direction. And then after that, we'll be more self-sustaining, and they still oversee us. They still provide training when needed, but they pull out a little bit because we should be on our own 2 feet by then and moving things forward. But those first 3 years, we have checklists and we have all kinds of training that we go within, and then we have to report back to them.
So very grueling indeed when you compare the application process to these first few steps that the organization in the community has gone through these last couple of weeks. How do you retain all this information, and how do you rally the troops, so to speak, to make sure that everyone's on board and everyone's positive and they can see, that light is at the end of the tunnel, and that light is going to be very, very bright for all of Indianola, for residents, for the vast majority of the community, for visitors who come in to experience our downtown square?
I think the most important thing is to educate our community on what Main Street is and what it can do, and help everybody have a very clear vision of Main Street. So for me, I think education is key, especially with our business owners, residents, building owners, and investors, making sure they understand what Main Street can do for Indianola. So that is the first part of it, that like a little bit like what Leslie had talked about, just helping people understand what is this thing called Main Street. So that for me is kind of, on the forefront of working with our business owners within that Main Street district and seeing what their needs are, doing an analysis of this downtown area and trying to understand of what direction we need to move in first.
And let's just bury the lead a little bit. We talked earlier about the hiring of an executive director, and just recently, Erica, it was you announced as the executive director of Indianola Main Street. Mm-hmm. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How does it feel to now kind of be at the reins of this new journey leading Indianola Main Street?
Yeah, definitely feels good. It feels familiar, which is, really nice for me to be able to have gone through the last 9 months of educating myself, going through the application process and different things of that nature. I think sort of led me to where I am now and have a much better understanding.
Just tell listeners a little bit more about your background and kind of the goals and the vision that you see kind of in these early days of Indianola Main Street.
Yeah, so my background is small business owner. I've actually owned and operated business on the square for over 20 years. So familiar in that part of it. So I was able to kind of see as well a lot of different stages of our downtown growing up here as well, even going back to the 70s and remembering like what the square was. And so through each decade, the square has definitely transitioned over the years. What I would like to do probably most and is the biggest concern is just structuring our Main Street, working with our board of directors and figuring out how we can build a solid foundation. And until that is done, I think we have to pause just a little bit on some of the bigger picture items so that we are able to go back to that board of directors and that executive director, get on the same page and decide what our goals are going to be for Main Street in Indianola.
Leslie, just from a board of directors standpoint, just how great of a fit is it to have Erica leading the charge for Indianola Main Street, in addition with the collaboration of the board?
When we decided we needed a full-time executive director, we heard from all sorts of people who said, I know somebody who would be great at that. And that prompted us to say, okay, let's go out and see who is interested in this. And about midway through, Erica decided to throw her hat in the ring as well. So we went through, all of those applications and had what we felt like was an objective selection committee who really grilled those applicants because they were the people that were on that committee were either involved in Main Street or they were top investors for us or they were key community partners. So they had a lot riding on this. So we were all determined to get the very best person we could in that seat, and we got it. Erica's heart is in this. I said that recently to the Indianola Advocate. We couldn't have picked anybody better. We're just fortunate that she decided that she would come out of her 2-week retirement and do this.
No, that's awesome. I think it speaks volume of the character traits and just the vision that you have for the future of one of our most coveted assets in our downtown square. And I think from my perspective too, I was fortunately able to be involved with that community meeting that Indianola Main Street in Main Street, Iowa hosted here a couple weeks ago. And it was really eye-opening, but also a great opportunity to be in the same room of a lot of those individuals who are those community supporters or even investors to have that open dialogue in that early development of the strategic plan for Indianola Main Street, but also that survey data. It was for about a 2.5 week stretch there in early September, I believe it was, where Indianola Main Street had organized a community-wide survey to solicit the responses of community members and visitors alike of what they thought of the downtown square and Indianola Main Street. When you think about that data, or when you were both at that meeting as well, what are some of those facts and figures that stand out that are kind of coming to your mind as we're talking about this that are like, hey, this really is a key area that we see as an opportunity, or hey, this is an area where it could be a challenge, but we have some of these potential solutions in place or in motion to help us get there?
I think one of the biggest things that was not a surprise was the concern with parking. So that one I would say was not a surprise to me at all. One of the most interesting aspects going through it later was looking at what would you like to see downtown? What are some of like the new businesses, or what are we missing downtown? That part I liked hearing from people on what they would like to see come to Indianola downtown. So I would say that overall, I don't think there were any major surprises. It was interesting to see when they gathered that data. There were interesting parts of it. For example, like how many women filled out the survey versus males, the age categories of people that filled the surveys out versus the ones, the low numbers that didn't. So those parts were kind of interesting. I would have liked to maybe see a little bit bigger numbers of participants in the survey. I think it would have given us a better big picture. But that can also, we are able to do that and create surveys within this district to help us also make decisions down the road. And I see that probably happening. But I don't think for me, other than that, there was any big surprises with it.
I was interested by the number of people who were interested or would consider living in our downtown area. It was a much higher number than I ever expected. And I think that's pretty exciting for people to say, I think I could envision this and I could either move my family or move there myself.
Interesting, in a area that we probably need the most work on downtown.
Right.
Is upper story housing.
Exactly.
So the biggest interest lies in where I think we are lacking the most as a downtown. When you compare to other small towns or other Main Street communities and what they have done with their upper story housing, we are definitely behind the mark on that.
Right. And it's a big focus of Main Street. So that piece of the puzzle just seemed to fall into place for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when we were on that tour with Debbie Durham, the director of the Iowa Finance Authority, and Michael with Main Street Iowa, and some of those other key Main Street Iowa specialists that Indianola Main Street has access now, being a Main Street Iowa community. We were inside the Harrison building. We were up in a current resident on the Downtown Square in their beautiful apartment. And I remember that resident showing us the beautiful part of it, and she referred to it as the good, the bad, and the ugly. Mm-hmm. We went back to the ugly, and we saw, all the exposed brick and just kind of the blank canvas, if you will, to really reimagine what this space could be. I mean, that's got to be exciting, even though it's kind of like, whoa, what do we get ourselves into? But being in a space that's historic, to rethink and reimagine and rejuvenate what it could be, to then bring potential residents or visitors or business in to better utilize that space.
You're exactly right. And it's fun to walk around and envision not only our empty spaces, but other spaces that might be changed. So walking around thinking, what are we missing? And how could we use this? And Main Street is so good at that, at thinking of things that we have never thought of before, and saying, hey, maybe you could think of a cafe run by one of your programs out of the high school. They did that recently in Oskaloosa, and opened a luncheon cafe. There are all sorts of ways to think about spaces. There are all sorts of ways to think about your downtown, and they can help lead us in the right direction. They did a survey and they took pictures of what our current businesses are, and then they can help lead us towards, what are you missing? Is it a white tablecloth restaurant, or is it something for kids to do? All sorts of things.
And I thought, if anything, it gave a lot of motivation. You walk into a space that has been redone, and you see what it can be. And there are a lot of those downtown. A lot of spaces that need to be redone. Luckily, we got to see one that had been redone. But for sure, motivation. That tour gave a lot of motivation to focus a little bit better on our upper story.
With Harrison's, we literally got to see behind the curtains. So when you go inside, and if you haven't caught this yet, that facade on the old Harrison's building is fake. It's a facade that was put up, and it's freestanding. It actually protects this 1800s architecture that lies behind it that we are working to expose. And it was the first time that many of us had seen that. So to walk up in those spaces and say, oh my gosh, it's beautiful.
Well, not just walk up, but take that freight elevator.
We took our life.
Which was frightening.
Quite an experience.
Which was frightening.
Got to make sure you bring that up, because that was
something else.
WTF.
There are no stairs in that building.
But it was so cool because, you talk about historic preservation, and I mean, that's it to a T, right? And with that, when you have these ideas coming from those who are these community partners and these other organizations coming in to help us, is it often just the simplest ideas, and it could be things that we're making it too complicated? Is that also a good benefit to be a Main Street Iowa community, where it's bringing in those experts and these other opinions, where it's like, hey, you're overthinking it. Go back to its root and think of it in this frame. And it's kind of like a reminder as you go about your process to not overcomplicate, just keep it simple.
Well, and for me, that's huge. I mean, when we talk about resources and we talk about, using Main Street, Iowa as a guide, they've got, experts in that department that specifically can work and customize things for Indianola. And for me, that's the most exciting thing. They can come in and go, okay, well, how about this? Or how about this? And it, like you said, it could very well be things that we haven't even thought about, nor have we had the time, a lot of us as volunteers, to be able to put in the work that would need to be done to do that. So this opened a very different door as far as being able to focus and put the time and effort in on some of these areas that we probably needed to for a while now.
Yeah. That's very true. Our board has function evenings, weekends, nights, and we tend to zero in on specific things. But now it's kind of like somebody said, take a step back and look at the whole picture here. Look at how your downtown looks, how it feels, how people feel about it, what you're missing. So it's challenged us to look at the bigger picture.
Absolutely. And working with our partners, our community partners, the city, the chamber, economic development, I think that's one thing that we really want to highlight is the importance of these partnerships and these relationships. City's got some great things going on. Chamber's got some great things going on. Main Street's got some great things going on. And if we all work together, we can really, to me, blow some of the stuff out of the water, for sure.
Yeah, from my endpoint, I think that unity is at an all-time high right now amongst all these different entities and these individuals. And you've got passion, you've got vision, you've got guidance, you've got that structure, and you've got that support. So, I mean, the sky literally is a limit. I know we always say that with the balloons and everything else, but we can really do a lot of great things together. So me personally, I'm excited for the next steps to be part and to be along for the ride of this wild journey that is Indianola Main Street. So what do these next steps look like as we round out the end of 2024? We talked earlier about, the development of that strategic plan. Just kind of take us through that process and really kind of what October, November, and December could look like with Indianola Main Street.
So for October, just kind of getting settled in, we have our first official board meeting in October, where we'll be able to start putting a little bit of that structure together. In addition to that, we have, I would say one of our largest Main Street events, which is Wine, Witches, and Brews. And that is October 25th. So a lot of effort will go into making that event successful. Leslie chairs that event, has done an amazing job over the last few years. Bringing over 1,000 women into the downtown area for that evening has been huge. We'll go into November 7th. There will be several of us going to Valley Junction for kind of a new designation orientation type session that I'm very much looking forward to. I will do a little bit of training and orientation for my part as executive director in November as well. And then we go right into Home for the Holidays on November 23rd. So in between all of this is some additional training that we'll be going through. And I will be doing some additional training as well. So it's going to be a very busy October, November, December. But it's the first 3 months, so that is no surprise.
I think Main Street warned us. The initial stage was the what did we get ourselves into stage. And I think we're just coming out of that. So I was starting to wrap our arms around what do we have to do and when does it need to be done, and starting to understand it better. We have so much to learn, but we're getting there.
I think we kind of went from overwhelmed to now a little bit excited.
Right.
So once that wore off, because a lot is thrown at you at once when you get the designation, a lot, especially within probably 2 weeks.
For people who are running businesses and have other jobs.
Yeah, keep in mind, still volunteers. Yeah.
Yeah. So now that, if you will, the dust has settled, you're starting to, your mind's starting to your wheels are turning, and you're starting to see some different possibilities. The ideas are starting to pop into your head now. And that part for me is very exciting, because with everything that we're offering, and we want economic growth downtown more than anything, but we also want to bring back our downtown being sort of that special gathering place. And that's been absent for too long, as far as I'm concerned, because again, growing up here my whole life, it was a gathering place. And we lost that just a little bit along the way, and very ready to get back to doing some really exciting things on the square. I know the chamber with their concert series and different things like that has brought that back to the square as well. So that part I'm also very excited for.
We think Main Street will improve the quality of life for the everyday citizen, but it'll be great for our businesses who are not on the square. So when Cement Tech is trying to lure a top-level executive, they can point to our downtown square and say, what a great place to live, and you have this right at your fingertips. You could live 4 blocks away from all of this.
It's really a domino effect. When our downtown is successful, it just kind of goes out into beyond that district. Those businesses become successful. The more traffic we have in Indianola and downtown, the more that traffic is going to spread throughout the entire community. So what you want in the end, of course, is for it to be a win-win for everybody, whether you're in that district or whether you're outside of the district. We hope that it is beneficial all the way around.
And the tourism, that hotel motel tax, that's real money. So if we can promote our tourism, that has a very real effect on our community and the things we're able to do.
No doubt.
How vital are those events that are held on the square in terms of, you think about that first impression being a lasting impression, whether it be for an individual who may be coming to Wines, Witches, and Brews for the first time, or Home for the Holidays, or any other event that we have on the square year round. Just how important are those opportunities to create that first impression to then hopefully have those individuals keep coming back for more, whether it's living in upper level housing or shopping on the square or coming back to a future event with their families or with their friends?
Speaking as a past business owner, the one thing that I would say is when you have events like this, and Wine Witches and Brews, again, being a good example, you've got women coming in from out of town. And what I noticed as being a business owner is how many of them returned and said, oh, I was here for Wine Witches and Brews for the first time, and actually came and did holiday shopping and other things in the stores downtown because they enjoyed their experience. So they returned. That's huge. If we can get more people doing that, we'll do the same thing for Home for the Holidays. Bringing as many people as we can for that very special time of year that people gather and do things. And even if they can't get to everywhere that particular night, I guess I have been pleasantly surprised at how many of them returned at a later date. So that's exciting. We haven't had that in a while. So that is the momentum I would like to keep going from these events.
And we made some changes this year so it lines up perfectly. We go from Wine Witches and Brews, and we invite them back for Home for the Holidays 3 weeks later. They come back for Home for the Holidays. We invite them back for Small Business Saturday. So we just keep building on that and keep inviting them back for event after event. There are all kinds of great reasons to visit Indianola. I think we're going to have to come up with something in I've been
questioned a little bit about that, about Home for the Holidays this year. We actually moved it earlier in November. We had it in kind of a mid-December range. A couple things worked against us. The weather can be very, very tricky, as well as we were cutting it pretty close to Christmas. So we wanted to kind of back it up a little bit in the hopes that we would not only have better weather, but that for shopping needs that people would be just beginning their holiday shopping. So that is the reason that we moved it forward. We also want to be very respectful of our neighboring communities like Milo, who has their own holiday festival there. So we want to be respectful of the dates that they hold theirs. And so that was the reason that we moved it up pretty significantly this year. And we'll try it out and see how it goes.
And we'll be transparent. Every event we do, it's all about those registers ringing and people having really strong sales nights. That's why we do all of this.
To that end, too, I want to ask, the Indianola Main Street district is about 9.5 blocks, including the square. And one of those components, and we talked a little bit about this during that community meeting with Main Street, Iowa and their crew and the community members, was the untapped potential by having Simpson College neighboring practically the downtown square. And you think about the initiative with the Wonder on Buxton project to allow that connectivity between campus and square. Just what are some of those ideas or just next steps or just building upon that momentum of bringing in Simpson to feel more included with their community and especially with the downtown square?
Well, you talk about being the right time for us. It could not be more right to have Jay Byers as president of Simpson College, who has run the Greater Des Moines Partnership for so many years. And he, of course, has a great understanding of the power of business districts and understands fully how that can benefit Simpson and how Simpson can benefit us as well. Actually, I was emailing this morning. We're going to go over and sell wine witches and brews tickets to the students at a discounted price next week. So what a great thing for the students and opportunities to say, you're not only attending this beautiful campus, but we've got a vibrant downtown literally 3 blocks away.
And that's definitely on, if I have a to-do list, it's definitely how do we strengthen our relationship with Simpson?
Right.
Again, maybe an area that we have needed to improve on for a while, but I think it was all about the timing. And like Leslie said, the timing feels so right at this particular time to really start having a great working relationship with Simpson College.
And they're as enthusiastic as we are.
That's great. Add them to the team. Add them to the never-ending list of community partners. The more, the merrier.
Well, they're on there.
Yeah, oh yeah. But lastly, I just want to open up the floor to both of you as we wrap things up, just to kind of share any final closing remarks or just thoughts you have as we think more about Indianola Main Street and these next steps in the future, that the impact it'll have on our community.
I'm going to go back to my favorite example from Leslie, which was, we are in the process of building this ship, and there's a lot of parts to this. And this is going to be a marathon. It's not going to be a race. We're going to get there in our own time and pace ourselves at, in a way that makes the most sense for Indianola. And this is not just about a board, and it's not just about an executive director. It's really about the entire community coming together and working to make Indianola successful. And at the end of the day, that's really what we want, and that's what our goals are. But it is going to take some time, and we would just ask for people to be patient, that we will get there, and get involved. There are endless ways to get involved, whether it's an event or whether it's on a committee. There are multiple ways that people can get involved with Indianola Main Street, and we welcome anybody that would like to get involved. Please come join us.
You bet. As the board gets settled, we were going to appoint not only our officers, we have now a vacancy for president, but also our committee chairs. And once those chairs are set, then we're going to be looking for the community to come help us carry out each of those strategies for those 4 pillars. And pillars are organization, economic vitality, design, and promotion. So there's a little something for everybody there. Mm-hmm. But as Erica said, man, it's a lot of work and we can't do it alone, but it's pretty exciting. And what a huge difference for our community. So it's starting to understand Main Street, and we'll teach you as much as we can as we learn as we go along. But it is becoming involved so that we can push all of this forward.
And what are the best ways for listeners, community members, really anyone, to learn more about Indianola Main Street and to stay connected and follow along with these next steps in this journey?
I think there's multiple ways. If you're wanting to learn more about Main Street, first of all, you can contact us. We're happy to sit down anytime, even if you have a small organization that would like to learn more about Main Street as a group. We're happy to present that as well. Do not ever be afraid to get on the Main Street, Iowa website. Fantastic place to find great resources to just learn more or get a better overview of Main Street. And then if you are wanting to get involved, whether again, it be volunteer, maybe you're interested in a committee, again, contacting us, and we will get that ball rolling for you.
And follow us on social media so you'll get the latest of what we're doing as well as events that are coming up. So
Yeah, follow them on Facebook, Indianola. I think it's still Indianola Downtown Main Street, but I know the URL by heart. It's facebook.com/shop Indianola.
There you go.
I know it by heart because I stay
job.
engaged.
Nice.
I stay engaged. But no, I just want to thank you again so much for joining us on this episode of Indy Unplugged. Listeners, make sure you leave us a comment, share a review. That way we can make sure we're hitting the mark on these. We've been going kind of semi-weekly episodes now. We used to be monthly, but now we're picking up steam by having more content and information distributed through your feed. So leaving those comments and those reviews would be helpful to make sure that we're hitting the mark each and every episode, that this is all relevant information for you. And who knows, maybe next time you can be a future guest of Indy Unplugged.